go to ILM. Make it to ILM probably 2 to 3 times a month. My working with visual effects people is I feel it's very artist direct. You have transmissions which are kind of T1 lines, and they can see me, I can see them, but it's still not the same as actually going by each artist's box. It's very important to me. That's where you get a lot of direct communication with the artists, and you cut through the, I guess, you know, the telephone, you know what I'm saying? Where things can get misconstrued. Right now, I kind of put out a 911 call to the studio and ILM, basically saying we are effed. I wrote an email to everybody, all the heads at Paramount, Steven's office, everyone, just so everyone knows. I wrote to all the heads of ILM saying, all my movies, Pearl Harbor, Armageddon, Transformers, Island, whatever, I was able to show the movie this time. And we have sections of the movie you cannot show to an audience because there's nothing there. We've got now 2 months left. So it's just to make them accountable. Now, they're not going to be able to screw the release up because they will get it done. But they've been told since the beginning of the year that they are effed and they don't know how effed they are. All right, but I'm telling them you're effed because I just know we have so much work to do. It's this movie's definitely 3 times harder than the last one.
On the first film, ILM created 420 shots. On this one, we're creating 552. The slightly deceptive thing is that these shots are so much larger.
No one knew what these robots were going to do on the first movie. And no one knew what they were going to look like, and we found that, you know, through the process of doing the first movie. So the second movie, we at least had the comfort of knowing, you know, how we can make these things and what they need to look like to look real on screen. So to a large extent, the second movie was just more.
Everything does start with the script, and certainly the numbers of characters that as we're reading the script, whoa, wait a minute, there's another one, there's another one. A lot of brand new characters are revealed in the script.
We had only, I think, 14 hero robots on the last film, and on this one we had 45. And in total, we had 217 assets to build. So just the volume of work that we were going to have to produce in the time that we had was incredible.
All right, Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen. We're just about done with production. It's been about 2 years for a lot of us working on this thing. 350 talented artists contributing to the... Hey, Michael, yeah.
What are you doing?
Just working on putting together a little animation kind of documentary thing that we can show at the wrap party.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Can we actually do more now?
Oh yeah. Let me go ahead and cut this off and get right back to doing what I was doing.
With the new robots in this movie, we started from scratch to a degree. The technology always advances and our methodology always advances. We revisited the old robots to get them up to speed for this movie.
Even though we've reused a lot of the assets like Optimus and Bumblebee, they came forward from the first film, we found that all of a sudden the camera's looking in new places that we never painted or needed upgrading from the first film. So even our characters from the last film needed a complete makeover when they got into this one.
The transformations we did on this film have become a lot more aggressive than the transformations we did on the first film. And by aggressive, I mean we've tried to keep the robots on the move as they transform rather than driving into frame, stopping, and transforming.
We look at each robot and use the transformation as a way to help define their character. On Jetfire, for instance, Michael pushed us. He said, this is an old man robot, so his transformation has to be really clunky and jerky, and stuff has to not work. And you'll see him, smash his own leg trying to get it to rotate into place, and pieces dropping off of him, and stuff falling out all over the place. Whereas, Devastator's this very violent transformation with all these robots being smashed into each other.
We had the advantage on what we did here at Digital Domain in that we had the smaller robots, and by their very nature they were faster. And Michael said, yeah, these things are quick. We're not going to dwell on their transformations. They're just part of how they move. We had 8 kitchen bots that we were working with, and all of them had to transform.
Even though they're only in a few shots, you can't skimp on them. So you've now got to design, build, model, do every bit of work that you would have to do on any other creature, but they only feature in a few shots. So it can be a little expensive, but I think it sort of pays off.
Michael's camera work in that sequence, he never really wants to play anything to camera. He wants it to seem sort of incidental to camera, like, oh, here goes the camera moving over here. We just picked up one transforming. The sequence was more about putting this little commando group of little nasty Decepticons together than it was dwelling on anything.
Getting those robots to stick, and especially with the challenges of the anamorphic lens, was very, very daunting. And we chased Float a lot in that sequence. Of the little dick bot, the blender guy. He was slipping around on the stool, and lock him down, and then the router bot on the wall starts slipping around. So then you have to do different tracks for different guys in a lot of cases.
The big challenge was taking these smaller characters and still making them very dynamic and interesting. Wheelie was one of the characters we were most excited about going into Transformers. And Michael was very concerned about Wheelie as well. In fact, he told us he was his favorite character, but, early on in the movie, before he'd even established who Wheelie's character was completely. And I think the reason is that Wheelie's he's a torn character. He's torn between the good guy, the bad guy type thing. He doesn't really know who he wants to be.
With this one, he wanted to have hands and to be smaller and cuter, or the eyes to be more complex and have more like the eyelids, the way they worked. He wanted to have more pieces, mechanisms, little things moving inside.
When we first started, Michael was saying, I think he's kind of schizo. That's our first direction. I think he's all over the map. Like one minute he's going to rip your head off, and the next minute he's, I'm sorry kind of thing. We did some tests with that and kind of were developing along that lines. And then he said, no, I think he's more like a little bit of a kind of an I love you character. Like if he was looking at Megan, he'd be going, I love you. So we made him this sweet little character and, started plugging that into a couple scenes.
Oh, you're cute. Name's Wheelie. Yeah. Say my name. Say my name.
Finally, he said, nope, I've got it. He's like a Joe Pesci little shithead character. And that's where he finally ended up.
Oh, that's my eye, you crazy spit!
The unveiling of Alice to the Pretender, that was something that we hadn't done before. And we had to create some very complicated procedural animation that could integrate to keyframe animation that was now also matched to the real world performance. So that required some development. I loved the concept from the beginning. I remember I got to meet with Michael before we started the show, and he showed me a picture of Alice and said, oh, this is going to be cool, and saw some of the concepts, and then we started getting into it. It's just conceptually a cool thing. You've got a hot chick turns into a badass robot. The tricky thing, of course, for that, though, is integrating those. It's one thing to go from a rigid body object that you can transform in a very mechanical engineering style and end up being a robot. Those sort of things go hand in hand. But here we're starting with an organic creature that has to become this very inorganic, mechanical robot.
And she always had this hair that was like these dreads that were hanging down, which were kind of nice, because when she'd move, you get some nice movement in them. And real late in production, we were looking at the one shot where she transforms, and Michael was looking at the hair and he goes, she's like a Medusa. And once we took that hair and took it from hanging straight down and brought it up and made it part of her personality, the character just came to life.
Michael had said early on in the movie to us that You know, in the first Transformers, he's done the transformations. You know, he really labored those, I think, for all the good reasons. How cool was it? Everything's transforming right in front of your eyes. But there are a couple of examples where it's a unique situation that we wanted to show it off, and I think that's one of them. And the other was Reedman.
Early on, Michael showed us the animatics on the Reedman microcon sequence, and he was in love with it. And he'd mentioned to us in one meeting too, he goes, I showed this animatic to Steven Spielberg the other day, and he gave me a high five. So right then it was, okay, this is a big one for him. You know, we got to knock this one out of the park.
Michael certainly, like all of us, found ways of using special effects to help tell his story. I don't really believe that Michael Bay is so effect-minded that the story is subordinate to the special effects set pieces. Just the opposite, Michael uses special effects to enhance his story.
Michael had set a tone of the behavior of the microcons, and he did this on set. In this particular case, he had a sheet with the ball bearings on it and these big old magnets, and Michael's underneath, you know, moving these things around, and you see that behavior in the shots prior. You see this sort of very staccato, jitterish-like behavior of the ball bearings. So that set the tone for us. We then took that idea and created a character that was this skittish, nervous creature, and you see that in the little pill bugs as they hatch out and they march off to assemble Reedman. But it came from a physical reality of shooting something on set, which is interesting.
So once we get the shot to a point where we feel like it sells the main idea and it's getting across all the main points we want to hit, then we're ready to show it to Bay. You know, his reactions can kind of vary. Sometimes we're a little bit off the mark from what he wants.
Don't you think it's a little fucking weird?
And sometimes we completely nail it.
Getting better.
Our transmissions with Michael are pretty entertaining. We usually have them 3 or 4 times a week.
It puts us right there in the room with him whenever he needs. It's a broadcast that's a live feed between ourselves in San Francisco and Michael in Los Angeles, where we show the work that we're doing and he comments on it.
This is a goat. We were talking about a goat right here.
We have these tablets where you can draw right on the screen, and he can draw and I can draw, Scott Benza can draw, to show what we're thinking the shot should be. If he doesn't like the design of the shot, he'll draw the size of the character, where the movement should be, where we might change the camera. Then we go again, we change it.
You see where you are right now? There's no way to make it counterclock and we get kind of to this. You can go a little bit far and then come back to us and we can get ravaged, spend more time of him clawing the face.
Typically, I would say the number of iterations that he sees on a shot would be less than 10, I would say, if we're lucky. Worst case would be something that, you know, goes into the 20 or 30 times that we need to show him.
No. I need to see my Facebook friend. Put him on video. Guy wants to be my Facebook friend. I do not. KG! Yeah. Are you my Facebook friend?
Yes.
Okay. Have I ever sent you any messages?
No, not yet.
That's because we're not friends, KJ. I'm just kidding, KJ.
Sometimes what we think needs to happen isn't what Michael thinks needs to happen, and he's pretty vocal about it.
Oy.
It's all wrong. We don't know what are you guys doing? I was very clear about this. This doesn't make any sense.
Coming back is weird. We're just wasting time, and it's not getting to the point. You flip the image, it definitely f***s everything up. This Megatron back there is so lame. Now, granted, you didn't spend a lot of time on this, correct?
No.
There's something about him. He just looks like a pinhead. Does anything with Megatron's arm? Does it do anything with a gun? It just sits there. It's just a big, ugly claw. Ay. No, I'm just thinking, you guys have a lot of work. A lot of work. Please. I've had a few freakouts on this movie. My one freakout came, and I call the producer at ILM, his Wayne, and I said, Wayne, Any director right now would want to blow their effing head off right now, okay? How is this movie ever going to effing get done, okay? Please, I'm going to write you a check for $300,000 from my account to hire more effing people. Anything, just anything to get me out of my misery.
Michael likes to joke with us on the transmissions. He asks about, like the other directors, okay, how many times has so-and-so come up? Well, they've come up 1 or 2 times. He comes up pretty frequently. He's come up pretty much every other week for quite a while.
He's very accessible, which is pretty rare. He'll wander into your office and ask you how it's going and how the shot's progressing that he knows you're working on, you're responsible for, you're supervising. And then, you know, you'll say, well, I'll show you Tuesday, Michael, and you better have a version on Tuesday to show him.
It's cool. Where'd you get this?
Oh,
That's from the set.
I know that. I don't know. I just want to know how you stole it. It's okay. It's fair game. You get to keep it. If you stole it, you get it.
We can spend a lot of time second guessing sometimes what something needs to be, and certainly what it needs to be in the final shot of a movie. And Michael is involved with our process to a degree that we can skip some guessing a lot of the time. It's a pretty direct path to the decision maker.
But just take a little moment for the body to...
It's actually pretty encouraging and motivating to hear when he really does like something, or the fact that he is very open to ideas and for us to suggest things. Having him react and interact with us like that is actually part of, I think, what makes the show fun.
Here. It's like a plastic surgeon, yes. And we're going to do your face like this, and then we're going to tuck it here and a little Botox there. Is there a way we can slow the film down just a hair bit, like right there, you know? So you have like a little hang time. A little more hang time? You know, like that, so you can get a little more of the...
The animators do love having him come around. They do really enjoy the attention he gives them, and they do enjoy the show that he puts on.
Michael came up here and he was going around to different artists' desks talking about what he wanted, and I asked him, what do you think the staging for the shot would be? And he goes, here, well, let me show you. He gets down, he's like, I want Optimus kind of curled up like this, and I kind of want him to roll over like this. Kind of like this, okay? I was kind of taken aback, but I don't really even remember. But later I had to ask Rick what actually Michael did, because I was staring at him going, dude, Michael Bay's in my cube on the ground. That's awesome.
I feel these mountains are really tight on them. You know what I mean? They're right behind them, which makes them look fake, by the way. I don't know. Do these things move away?
One detail of working with Michael on this one that was a new development, I think, both for Michael and for us, was several scenes that we had that were entirely CG. One thing that we discovered that was very difficult was that we had a hard time in CG figuring out how he wanted the cameras to move, and he would kind of get a little frustrated in our transmissions that we couldn't react quickly.
They were having trouble blocking the scene, and I didn't realize that at first. It was just a painstaking approach. The cameras were very mechanical, and what I realized is, God, wait a minute. They're animators, and I'm a director, and I block things every day. And it's like, that's the problem. Here, give me that. Yep. They had this little stage that they started. It's wired with infrared. It tracks me wherever I am on a stage, and they put in these crude little models of my different robots, and I was able to compose my shots. Literally, I was able to block the scene in their little room in about a half hour. Literally, I'm just, okay, switch my lens. I had my lens control. They can raise me up on this digital world, and so I'm standing on the floor and I'm moving around like a cameraman. It just circumvented so much, time by me going up and being able to go on a stage like that and block it myself.
Another very difficult sequence was the forest battle. More fighting, not so much dialogue, but it's supposed to be like way up there, like it's an Akira Kurosawa battle scene in a Japanese film of great proportion.
Michael gave us the mandate that these are not going to be big lumbering robots that require a lot of effort to get around. They're agile martial art experts. He had a great team of previs artists down in LA. Took 3 artists like a month to put this together, and we tried to go overboard a little bit with how much fighting was in the previs that we did, so Michael would have a slew of things that he could choose from.
Of course, what's difficult is that we'll do the animatic and it's kind of on a virtual set. And then you get out there onto the real set and this is the space you've got. So you start adjusting and covering plates, and we even shoot virtual backgrounds to make sure that we can still get the shots that Michael wanted to from the animatic, just in case the real space didn't quite work for what we needed.
Michael had always been pretty specific about wanting flaming trees in the background, particulate flaming debris in the air. The robots are massive. They're 40 to 60 feet high, so we need them kicking dirt up at every step. So we had to go out and shoot a lot of that. We also had to do a lot of digimat work or paint work on the ground to have footfalls, scuffs in the ground that the robots leave behind as they fight. So that was a lot of work on our end.
It's pretty fun to work on beating the crap out of Optimus in this movie. I'll kind of take a look at, all the punches and hits that they take during a sequence, and then sort of come up with the end amount of damage and really just mess them up. And then I'll sort of go back and remove things in each stage, and we try to limit the number of stages because you don't really see everything in every shot. So I think with Optimus we had 4 stages of damage.
So over the course of the sequence, you'll see he acquires more and more damage, and that's done through model, like breaking the glass in his windshields or damaging his face, and then incredible paint work of dirt, streaks, there's grass stuck in his helmet like football players have after they get tackled, just looking at lots of fight reference and figuring out the best elements that we could show to show the progress in the sequence and show that he is getting worn down until its big conclusion.
That's looking good.
Okay, go.
I love the grass hanging on it, guys.
Yeah.
Look at that. You gotta put that shit on there.
We ended up doing a ton of simulation on this show because Michael, he requires the highest level of realism that we can give. And that means, when somebody gets hit by, a giant tank round, that part of them would blow up, and he wants to see that. If something splashes into water, he wants to see that. If something blows up, he wants to see real looking smoke. And if we're cutting down trees and smashing trees in the forest, he wants to see those things moving like they really would. We have an aircraft carrier that we had to blow up, that we had to fracture in multiple places. The planes on the deck all individually had to be broken and fractured. The planes had to be able to flip over. There were helicopters.
It's easy to forget that everything in this shot, absolutely everything, had to be accounted for and built and textured and provided to be simulated and lit and dropped into the water.
Once Michael Bay saw the planes and the helicopters, we had to add more. We had to add chains. We had to have people, falling off and trying to hang on to the boat for dear life. You can see that he's having so much fun. He really likes this stuff as much as we do. When Michael came to visit once, we were showing him some of the destruction that we were doing, and Michael kind of laughed and said, "Do you have a team of people doing this kind of stuff all day?" And we said, "Yeah, we have a whole team of people just blowing stuff up." And he said, "If I worked here, I would work on that team."
On the first movie, Optimus was our biggest, most complex model. Our average robot on this movie is about 1.5 times as dense as that. And Devastator is about 7 or 8 times as dense as that.
When I loaded the whole entire creature all at once on my machine and tried to get it over into our proprietary software, my machine actually completely froze and had a total meltdown.
Our computer IT guys came up to look at what had happened. They said that the motherboard was dead, the hard drive had failed, and the memory was fried. So, everybody was a little bit afraid of Devastator at that point because he would devastate your machine.
I want to show you what happens when we try to open a scene that has Devastator saved with all of his high-res pieces on. Eric has been friendly enough to save a scene for us with all the high-res pieces turned on. It took about an hour to save. Okay, ready to send this over to Derek? Yeah, ready. All right. Okay, go for it. All right, let's go. Derek, can you open up GF 170? Now that's a giant fucking robot.
It's about 5 times the amount in Optimus Prime. We think Devastator is the biggest creature that we've ever done at ILM.
What we decided to do was to actually have the rig of the Devastator asset be made up of several other assets, which is actually what it is in the movie. It's made up of different construction vehicles.
When we first showed the original Devastator to Michael, you know, we had been brought to our knees by putting this thing together and putting all this detail and all this extra work into the biggest asset we had ever done. And when Michael saw it, he said, it doesn't look detailed enough. So we were kind of sent back to square one, and we had to go in and add more detail and add more parts. And we basically doubled his size again.
When we found out that that sequence was going to be in IMAX, it got even better because now we had a lot more frame, top and bottom, to work with, so that we didn't always have to kind of fit him into a rectangle. Now we had this huge square.
Every little part of that IMAX frame is the same resolution and the same number of pixels as a normal movie that we would do here. So, you know, when you look at the frame on the left, that's the 2K frame, that's what we normally do. This IMAX frame, it's 4K, it sounds like twice as much. It's really 8 times as much.
It's simplest. You're just seeing more in an IMAX frame, so we get away with less. And every inch of what we put up on the screen has to be accounted for.
Okay, next one.
At ILM, we have a pretty huge render farm, you know, and we can share with the other shows, and other shows recognize when we're about to finish that we, you know, kind of take over the pool. And we have thousands of machines out there. And every night, we completely fill them up with this movie. This movie is just, it's so huge, it's filling up the whole facility.
So this is, right?
Usually, we can get a render out overnight. IMAX, it can be 3-4 days.
We looked at one of the shots and figured out that if we took that shot and rendered it on a home PC just once, and normally when we render shots, we render it a few dozen times. If we did that just once, it would take 3 years on a top-of-the-line PC.
No. Oy, 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 oy.
And that's how it's done. Cut to 2 months later.
Back next week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.